And we're back. Welcome to the Crash Labs. Today I've got some very, very interesting guests, and I'm very pleased to have you on. Trey and Maura Kolb. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Denis. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
So you guys are visiting Toronto, having a blast. The weather's turning.
It's nicer here than in Winnipeg, where I came from.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. What's going on in Winnipeg?
Sleet.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of nasty.
Ugh.
And in Dryden, snow. So this is way nicer.
I remember it was August, I forget what year, and I started with Gold Corp up in Red Lake. And I remember in August scraping frost off my windshield and being like, what the fuck?
What have I done
doing in
wrong?
This place? Yeah.
What am I doing here?
For sure.
My 30th birthday was in Red Lake, and we were sitting outside by the fire. There were beers everywhere, that sort of thing. Come out the next day, everything's covered in snow. It's
Perfect.
like May. So, yeah,
Perfect.
that's pretty normal.
Gross.
85 to 80 to 90 degrees in Texas today.
Where do you live in Texas?
I live in Tyler, Texas, which is a small town about 2 hours east of Dallas and about 2 hours west of Shreveport, Louisiana. So fairly close, about an hour from the Texas-Louisiana border.
You're getting lots of Californians down in Texas these days, eh?
People are moving in, even to Tyler. It's crazy. I have a friend she's in the real estate business, and she actually advertises on a website, and she has people move their business off of a video of the house. And then once those people move, like she had a couple move from Oregon, brought their welding business in, and within a year, 6 other families had moved in around them.
Have you always been are you originally from Texas?
No, I've been there about 22 years.
Where are you from?
Grew up in San Diego.
San Diego.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're an early Californian.
Early California.
Move.
Grew up surfing. Went to school in Northern California at Humboldt State back in the early 70s. That would have been everything wasn't legal back then, but they were sure doing it up in
Humboldt.
In Humboldt County, yeah.
Definitely. I had a friend, I worked with a guy in Ghana who was from Humboldt, and he was an oceanographer turned geology, but didn't have, oceanography was his sort of more specified discipline, and loved to surf, loved to indulge in the Humboldt
Vegetation.
You call it vegetation. Yeah, exactly.
So
good guy though.
I majored in mathematics, but I had an underdegree in forestry, and then I worked for the Forest Service for about 6 years, not out of Humboldt, but actually in the mid part of the state called Mount Shasta, and surveyed logging roads up there.
No way.
Yeah. So that was some interesting time. I got paid by the U.S. government to basically hike through virgin territory and virgin woods and survey logging roads. We did what's called running P line, preliminary line.
Yep.
So we would come in behind the guys that cruise the timber and decide where the road should go. And a 3-man crew that, each of us had a stick and like they did in the old days before GPS, and we'd stake the road for the cat to come in and push the road in.
Crazy. Did you use one of those little boxes with the string and what are they called? The click. I used one in Nevada. When I used to me and Cal Heron staked all the Nevada King stuff. And he had me on this I had my compass and chain, and I was out there laying stakes down, and I had this click tape. It was basically like a roll of string, like really fine string. Put it on your belt and then just walk and it clicks, and then exactly when time for a post.
No, we didn't use that.
No.
Anyway, yeah, it was good times. And then that was probably into the mid '70s, and then the Sierra Club discovered a little bird called the spotted owl, and it shut down all the forestry in Northern California.
Wow.
And one of the reasons today we have all the major forest fires is because they don't manage that timber anymore like they did.
Yeah, which is interesting to see them come around on that. They've now since called, and this is a call from both sides, that they have to do proper fire management. And I think it was like Trump who famously said they just have to. What did he say? They just have to sweep up the forest, and he wasn't wrong. I mean, in some ways, right? It's like,
the way
he just said
the
like
way.
sweep it, but the idea is like you got to clean that out. You got to burn that out. Mm-hmm. So what took you into mining, Trey?
Well, kind of moved around. I was after the forest gig, I moved to Denver and got into investment banking brokerage with Merrill Lynch and Kidder Peabody and Payne Weber, and spent about 25 years doing that. And then kind of half retired and moved to Texas and had a horse ranch in North Texas, and got bored. And so I decided I started writing a little research, and I was kind of intrigued with this would be like 2003, 2004. Gold was just starting to take off, and there was all these young mining companies were springing up everywhere.
Yeah,
and so it kind of got me started in it, and I got contacted by a company that's actually still in business today.
were you investing in it at first?
I was investing a little bit, but I was writing research, and actually I was the only one. I noticed that of all the research I would read on these junior mining companies, nobody was ever looking at their financials and balance sheets. They only cared where the property was.
Yeah,
and they didn't really even, in the early days, they didn't even care about the property.
Sure.
It's just it was pretty easy to raise money back then. By this point, it's probably 2006, 2007, and things were booming. And I wrote an article in a company called Paramount Gold, and published this very early days of Seeking Alpha, and I was publishing on Seeking Alpha. For anybody who really cares, you can go research me, Google me on Seeking Alpha, and you'll find some of my old stuff on Seeking Alpha. But they said, "Why don't you come look at our project?" And I said, "Well, how do I get there?" They said, "Well, you fly to Chihuahua, we'll pick you up, we drive 8 hours, we'll stay in a little town called Creel up on the rim of the mountains. Then the next day we'll drive down to the mine, or down to the project." This was just a drill project. And you spend the night there, and then we work your way back. And I said, "So like 5 days to see your little project? I don't think so."
it's a lot of days.
Yes. So I said, "Isn't there a faster way to get around? Aren't there helicopters there or private planes?" And they said, "Well, we can't afford to do that." So I said, "Well, what about if I bring some other analysts with me?" And they said, "Well, it'd still be too expensive." So I thought, well, so I had another idea, and I knew that Gold Corp back then was doing these junket to take, because they had 5 or 6 mines, and they would fly everybody into Mexico City, and then in 5 days they could see all the
things in that area,
all their mines. Yeah. So I ended up calling a few other companies and asking if what they thought of the idea. And luckily, I called Darren Wagner, and he had a company then called West Timmins Mining that was operating down there. Later sold to Lakeshore.
I think that was the first stock I ever bought, WTM.
Is that right?
Yeah.
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 But anyway, they thought it was a great idea, so it got off the ground. I called around and got some analysts to go and figured out who had the helicopters and the planes, and did this analyst tour that was a huge success, and had, on the first trip, Ralph Aldis from U.S. Global went with us. I can't remember everybody. Somebody from R&B, and Louis James. And it was just very successful. And so I spent about 5 years doing that, organizing. This trip was the Chihuahua trip, but I ended up having one that was centered out of Hermosillo, and went to see companies there, and one outside of Durango, and one out of Mazatlan, and just kept organizing things, and it was a big success. Everybody liked it. I made a little bit of money, and I learned the mining business from some of the smartest, by traveling with some of the smartest guys in the business.
What a cool way to do it. Yeah. So basically kind of getting these groups of investors and influencers and writers and people together and just sort of.
At the time, it was a lot of fund managers. Because the fund managers couldn't really go on these trips. They couldn't. The SEC was starting to crack down, and so Frank Holmes at U.S. Global, he said to me, this is such a great idea because we can send our managers on this thing, and we're not exchanging any money or getting comped in any way.
Right.
I was kind of a middleman for that. So.
Very cool. Very cool. And then, so how did Ely get started?
One of the guys that on the Hermosillo trip, we went to a town called Caborca and a company called Capital Gold, and John Brownlee was running that company, and we got very friendly. And I did these trips. Once I got a trip set, we might do it at least a couple times a year on that junket. But I was and so. John and I got very close, and I actually started doing some banking work for him in that I took him around to look at other companies and projects that he might buy. So we tried to buy Castle Gold, but we got bid out by Argonaut what became Argonaut at the last minute. Mm-hmm. And then there was a company called Ely Gold that we did purchase. And then about that time, Gammon Lake got interested in Capital Gold and bought Capital Gold out. Well, as that transition was happening, John was approached by the shareholders of Ely Gold, and they had just a project in Nevada, and the guy, the CEO, had run off to China doing coal bed methane or something and spent all their money, and so they wanted to know if this project was any good and worth pursuing. So. John said, yeah, I think this could be something. So, but he was still CEO of Capital Gold, so he couldn't take. So I was instilled into Ely and helped get that project called Mount Hamilton back on track, and got a feasibility study done, a pre-feasibility study, and we did a little bit more drilling, and I ended up JVing it with a company, and we ended up developing that whole project, getting it to bankable feasibility study and fully permitted, and then we sold it to Waterton in 2015.
And then you had, and then suddenly you undergo like more of a metamorphosis as a royalties company, which is sort of like chapter 2 for Ely. Right?
Exactly. It changed. Unfortunately, John passed away right there within a couple months of us selling the project. And so we hadn't made a decision of where to go, but I had been talking for about a year with a prospector from out in Nevada, Jerry Bachman. And so Jerry was anxious to do something. So when John passed away and we had a little money in the bank, I teamed up. Jerry had actually built a portfolio of royalties by staking and acquiring properties, selling them and retaining the royalty. That royalty generation model that EMX2 is famous for. So that's what we started out doing, and we kind of put his model, a little capital behind what he was doing, he would just stake properties and flip them right out. We were consolidating properties, so we would, if we liked the area and there was a historic mine there, we knew we had a big database that Jerry had, so we would actually consolidate, and we'd maybe take a couple of years to put a whole property package together, buying in all the patented claims, the private land, try and buy in existing royalties, stake all the key ground, and then sell the projects. And that way those projects became much more valuable. And
so safe to say it was sort of like a prospect generator type model, and then you would vend out properties, retain royalty.
Correct.
Concept.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. And then you ended up with some pretty high value royalties because ultimately Ely sold for $300 million.
$300 million, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations.
Well, we actually, after we started making some money from selling these properties, and we had a small shop there. Jerry and I were the only 2 full-time employees. So I went out and started buying some royalties, and the first the first royalty we bought on the outside was on the Walbridge Fenelon project, which at that time was very hot and getting promoted quite a bit. And so then we were able to buy another royalty on the Fenelon, and then we did a deal with Eric Sprott to get the royalty on Jarrett Canyon when he owned that, and several other producing royalties that we picked up. And so a lot of the value was in that. And probably today, the one that's turned out the best is one near Barrick's Goldfield project. They call it Wren now, and they're just in the process of developing that.
Wow, what a fantastic story. I mean, it's not easy to crack into the royalties game, especially as a junior. So with the sort of generative side of it, prospect generation, flipping it out, joint venturing projects, getting sort of critical mass, did you find it difficult? I mean, at that time, it was interesting because I remember there was sort of an explosion of royalty companies. There was Ely, there was Metalla, just to name a couple. I'm sure there was many more, but those are the ones that stand out to me.
Yeah, well, 2016, Brett Heath from Metalla, and us, we were really the first two of the small ones.
Right.
And we were competing somewhat with EMX in there, but they were a lot more focused on Arizona and big copper projects and stuff. And but you're right. And so when we started, we were able to find these things at pretty incredible prices, kind of sleuthing them out and finding people that wanted to sell their royalties. But you're right. Then you had Nomad, you had Elemental, all these small royalties. They were
Osisko. I mean, they were bigger, but Osisko, thanks to their first big deal, was now in full-fledged royalty acquisition mode. So there's competition out there for you. Well,
at that time, the beauty for us was that the big boys didn't come down swimming in the smaller pond. So if it was a royalty that was going to be priced, at less than $5 million, they weren't even looking at that kind of stuff because they were busy with a lot of the bigger projects. Well, as the bigger projects, started to become fewer and fewer, then we started to have the Royal Golds and everybody, and they'd come down and some of the small things that we were able to buy before, they were actually bidding on them too. So
interesting.
Yeah, it got very crowded, and
it got crowded quick. I remember, even us as Gold Spot, because we had a generative royalty side as well. We have the Newfound Gold royalty. We've got a plethora of royalties. But that was something that was interesting to Triple Flag. So Triple Flag was running around doing what Triple Flag's doing, and now they're established as a major sort of royalty streaming company. But when we perked our head up through our RTO process, it was interesting for them because, Sean Usmar and I and James Dandol, and we had and the team over there, we had a really good, chat. And for them, it was interesting because we were fishing in that pond and they weren't really fishing in that pond. And we're like, listen, the types of royalties we're going to generate are really far away from development, really far away from, they're generative things. And they were interested, fascinating. It was fascinating to them. They were like, yeah, no, keep doing what you're doing. And we want a part of it. So they took a big chunk of us and endorsed our deal. And we ended up with an agreement with them downstream, which saw that 50% of our royalties, they took on 50% of some of them that we already had. And then we did a deal moving forward. We gave them an RTO, a ROFR on if we ever sell a royalty, they get first crack at matching that price. And so we still have that agreement with them today. But it was interesting to see how valuable even the big companies, and I had conversations with other major royalty companies at that time too, that were almost willing to, or very close to taking a crack at us as well, for much the same reasons. And they were interested in having us out there shooting for these sort of smaller projects that they just didn't have visibility or the time to do, but they still valued that
Right.
that hustle, and the generation of royalties at that stage. So congratulations on that. Obviously, must feel good to sort of, sayonara.
We feel like we got out at the right time.
Yeah.
And it was it was getting harder and harder to find new deals. And it was funny, this story that Eric would always say to me. He'd say, "How do you guys find these things? It's like you're stealing them."
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
He says, "How are you finding these to buy them so cheap?" He said, "You guys are like bank robbers." And then when we were negotiating to sell, and I talked to Eric, and he said, "What do you want to sell this for?" I said, "Eric," I said, "when you, as a bank robber, when you ride into town and there's two other gangs casing out the same bank, it gets a little harder
That's right.
to get the robbing done."
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. And so, Maura, I've ignored you on this so far. I'm sorry.
Okay. Trey's telling good stories.
I mean, you're a geologist, phenomenal geologist. By the way, for our listeners, Maura has a fantastic reputation in this industry. I always hear great things.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
So why don't you share some of your background with listeners? So you're a geologist.
I'm a geologist. I also am American.
You are?
I am. This week I actually become a Canadian citizen.
Where are you
It's
from?
very exciting. Just across the lake. I'm from upstate New York, so
I didn't know that.
got into this industry
Bills fan.
by chance. Yeah, Bills fan. I was talking to my professor back in university, and he's like, "Yeah, my old professor has this shear zone hosted gold project in like Thunder Bay." I was like, "I have no idea where that is, but I'm doing it. So you don't tell anyone else. Like that's mine." So that's how I ended up here. I moved up to Thunder Bay, and then fell in love with the area and started working in Northwestern Ontario, where I've been the last, I don't want to tell you how many years, but a while.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And then you were up in Red Lake as well, Gold Corp, and
Yeah,
you both did a stint there. You were at Campbell. I was at Dickinson.
I worked at all of it, you
Yeah.
know, because I started out in like mine exploration, trying to replace reserves, and
Yep.
then Paul Hartbridge came in as VPX, and the whole team, the senior team, got let go, and they look at me like, "You're it." I was like, "What? Okay, cool."
Sweet.
So built up a team of lots of people doing great things now, and we started replacing reserves and bringing down the discovery costs.
Was
and
that
stuff like
was
that
post like Nick Cianci and like Krisha Shoei and St. Louis? What was her name?
Carol? Yeah,
Carol St. Louis and all them.
I worked with all of them. Chris left to go over to the Timmins camp,
Yeah.
and it was like his replacement was like kicked out, and they said, "We want to go back to grassroots, and we want to really like go back to basics of geology," and so they kind of cleaned house, and it was like, we were a young crew. I think I was 30, maybe.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was the oldest one. I think.
Sink or swim.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Trial by
I like
fire.
that kind of thing because crazy. So that's fun.
Great. And you're a mother. You've got.
Yeah. So
Good
I have two kids.
Wow.
My son Bear and my daughter Alex, and I had the interview for Gold Corp the same day Bear was due.
Yep.
Lucky he came 5 days early, so I went to the conference there in Thunder Bay, that little prospector developer one. And they're like, "Oh, what's new?" And I was like, "Well, just had a kid." They're like, "Oh, when?" I was like, "Wednesday." They're like, "What? I'm sorry?" Like, "Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah, he's at home. He's good." I think that helped. So they thought I was like pretty nuts, and it was a downturn. So it was like 2012, and so I was just happy to get a job because I was consulting prior to that, and the work was really drying up. So
It's tough.
Yeah.
Like it's really tough for men and for women to be working remotely,
Yeah.
working in the exploration business and have a home life, have a family life, have kids, etc. Especially as a female, as a woman in this industry.
it was great to get to go to Red Lake, because I could
Yeah.
work all day and be home at night. And I had my daughter like right after that, and we just kind of put a bed outside the master bedroom with a fridge with bottles and pop them in their mouth and
Way you
hope
go.
for the best. And I don't think I could do that today. I'm a little older, and I think I like sleep way too much now, but
No
survived.
way. And so, and now you live in Dryden.
Yeah, moved down to Dryden a couple years back.
Okay. And you were with Treasury before this, right?
Yeah. So I been through the transitions with Newmont and then Evolution.
Yep.
I joined George Ogilvy there at Battle North for a little bit, and then that
Okay.
was bought out. So I was kind of like, what to do next? And they reached out, and so I thought, I'll move to the big city of Dryden from Red Lake after being there and going and doing my shopping in Dryden for the last 8 years. So it was a nice move.
The big move.
Yeah,
the big move. But Dryden is the thriving mecca of. I remember going to Dryden for like
there's
the
a
Chinese
Walmart,
restaurant.
right? There's like,
Go down there. Yeah, exactly. There's a Walmart. There's everything, and
it's a big transition from like growing up in New York, and my family just picks on me like crazy. They're like, "Where do you live? Can you show me that on a map?" Like they just don't get it.
Really
but
far. Like it's really far.
it's a commitment. Like
Yeah.
they've come to visit me a few times, but it's like you gotta drive and then get on a plane and then drive some more and drive some more and.
I remember moving from Red Lake to Timmins for Lakeshore Gold, which ended up being that WTM project, Timmins West.
Right.
And when I moved, I remember like being like, "Oh, I'm just gonna drive. I'll load up my stuff and
It's
away
a drive.
we go." Right? It's like 21 hours. It was like it wasn't. You're going what? I remember going through like Hearst and Kapuskasing and driving forever. Like I stayed the night in Thunder Bay. That's your first 7 hours of the trip.
Yeah.
Right. And then, and then doing the rest of it, I was like, holy shit.
It's quite a ways.
What a huge province this is.
It was the eye opener when I moved here. So I crossed the border and I had like everything I owned in the back of my car to go up to school in Thunder Bay for grad school. And I was like, yeah, my dad wasn't kidding. Like, get gas every time you see a town because like they're far apart. It's like
Crazy.
it was very different. But I mean, I fell in love right away and I was like, I'm staying here.
So how'd you come up with
bush.
Bear? What happened there?
Well,
We got to share it with the
yeah,
audience.
you have to. I
gave
told
me
you already. So.
Yeah, no.
So I was working a soil sampling program and consulting. It's actually pretty close to our property, which is kind of funny. And we were up really early. It was super, super hot summer. So we were like getting up and going out to the bush at 5 a.m. and hear this noise. And I'm like, what was that? And like all of a sudden, a bear charges us. And I'm with my husband at the time. And
Shit.
like
Black bear.
Black bear holds up the soil auger like we're in 300 the movie, where he like spears the animal. Yeah, so felt like that, and then another one comes out after that one bluffs off. So it was a mama and a cub, and it was inspiration really. We made him that day, and he was born like 9 months to the day after. Like you got to get inspired, and so it had to be his name.
That's the
It
best.
had to be.
That's the best.
Only geologist, right?
Oh, absolutely. So you like you guys fought off this bear? Did you have
Well-
bear spray or anything? Gun?
Had bear spray, so like.
Yeah.
Worst Army private ever, like you don't zip up your full bag. And
For
it
sure.
fell out like 2 stations earlier. So didn't have the bear spray. I have the bear banger, but like when you're facing down a bear, it is really hard to screw that lid on. Like I could not get the little cap on to shoot that thing off until the bears were both gone. And then I did it just to make sure.
Yeah.
But I went and stood in the lake until the other guys went and picked us up because we were at a kind of a remote spot on the property. And yeah,
Holy
it's got to be a story.
shit.
It makes life more exciting.
So aptly named Bear. What a cute name. That's awesome. So how did you meet this guy?
He found me.
All the way from Texas.
All the way from Texas, yeah.
It's very serendipitous. Like,
Well, I moved to Tyler, Texas. We got a house on the golf course, started playing golf, and figured I was, mostly retired. And some of the guys from Ely, the founders, called me and said they wanted to start a new exploration company. And so, and they wanted to put some flow-through money in themselves, but they needed somebody to be their beard, that wasn't putting flow-through money in. So that'd be the American. And so I called my friend Mike Tremblay to looking for a property. Mike's done a lot of prospecting up there. He originally found the Borden Lake property that he opted
Yeah,
to
for those that
probe.
don't know, Mike Tremblay, just to FYI, is a very industrious and somewhat famous, I would say, a prospector in Northern Ontario. There's a few guys that do this for a living. Mike Tremblay's one of them.
Well, a little background on me and Mike is we had at Ely, we met up with him one year at PDAC, and this goes back to the robbery mode.
robbery days?
Newmont had bought out Gold Corp, and they were operating at Borden Lake, and the original probe option agreement had an area of interest in it, and they wouldn't pay them on that. So we did a deal at Ely where we purchased half the royalty from them, and we put up the money to fight the arbitration, because it ended up costing about $700,000 to go through the arbitration process, which, the prospectors, Mike and his partner, they couldn't afford.
Mm-hmm.
So this went on, and actually it was in the middle of it when we were bought out. So I did stay on and finish that arbitration, which we were successful at. And but that's how. So I have a lot of history with Mike, and he had a property in this Dryden district, and he said this is a very interesting district. It's got great infrastructure. It's just never been consolidated, and we've staked a bunch of properties up there. And so I looked at what he had, and he said, and then Manitou Gold has property to the south. And if you could, put this all together, it'd be the first time this camp was ever consolidated.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of made sense to me, because I know, from the experience at Ely, we know the best projects we put together and sold were the ones where we successfully consolidated. And there hadn't been a lot of modern exploration because of that claim fragmentation problem. So we ended up doing a deal with Manitou Gold and put together, and then we've continued to put that together. But at that point, it was probably right after PDAC this year that my partner had gone to PDAC and had heard that Maura had left Treasury. And we were looking for somebody to come in, and we really wanted somebody young and energetic and new ideas and smart and that was interested in kind of moving up into the boardroom or into the corporate suite. And so he heard that Maura was available. And again, I didn't know that much about her background, but we were immediately impressed. And one of the reasons she had left Treasury is she was working on maybe starting her own thing that she could have more say in. So I said, well, why don't you come on with us? And so we brought Maura in as president. She obviously also heading the geology team, but she's being mentored and learning the corporate side and the money raising side and the exchange rule side and all of that. So corporate governance, I think, is the term.
And how's it going?
Hey, good so far. I get to hang out with Trey and hear all his stories all the time, and
good.
He gives me a list of homework, but it's fine.
Super exciting,
Yeah.
eh? And it's nice to break out and do your own thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to just try to do it on my own, and this is the hardest way possible. And it's been fantastic that Trey found me and able to learn from him, and he knows tons of stuff. And
you guys have fantastic, like a complementary chemistry about you guys too. And you're coming from totally different ends of the spectrum. And oddly enough, in a jurisdiction that isn't you're American.
I know.
You guys both, and here you are up in Dryden consolidating what might be one of Ontario's last major unexplored districts.
I think it is.
And
really
the nice
exciting.
thing is now her commute's even shorter. She can be on the property in 20, 30 minutes down the highway.
How awesome is that? And you get friends in low places too up there. It's nice to know the local talent pool and be able to pull from that.
Yeah, I haven't worked in Northwestern Ontario a long time. I kind of know everybody and who's good and who wants to come out and work and help. So it's been great. And I mean, I see like the community members at the grocery store. They know I'm invested. I am Dryden. I live there. So
Yeah,
kind of helpful.
and so Dryden Gold, for those listening, that's the company we're talking about that you guys are forming or you formed together. It's very exciting. So what's going on with Dryden Gold? Let's talk about it a little bit. Like where are we at with the discovery curve? It's a private company.
It's a private company now. We've spent, it's been almost 2 years now, year and a half, 2 years, consolidating this package. And like I said, we put those first two deals together, but we've just acquired some more property. two additional properties. We've staked some property in there since Maura's come on that seems strategic. But yeah, we've put together. It's a large package now, about 48,000 hectares, 480.
Yeah, stuff you can pull it up. Oh, there it is. Yeah, he's got it there.
And,
okay.
And it's this district has always been known for having high grade gold, but nobody's ever done any real concentrated work on the structural geology there. Even back in the days when it was historically mined at the turn of the century, there was never, and on our patented claims, there were 6 different mines, all operated by 6 different companies. So there was no cohesion. It was, most of them went out of business because they spent all their money building their own mill. And, if it was a place that probably would have seen a lot more production had it, been one company that had come in and built a single mill and mined all these different deposits. But it's very strategic. The geology there is. I'm going to let Maura talk to the geology because
Trey likes to play geologist, though.
Yes.
Yeah, let Maura talk to the geology, Trey.
For sure. Well, like I said, in my forward-looking statements, I always say I'm going to make some geological mistakes, and Maura will be here to correct me.
So what you got is so I mean, just to summarize it, so you've got this area up in Dryden. It's an orogenic gold camp. It's greenstone. It was always sort of partitioned and fractionated, as you mentioned, between ownership. Different people had different tiles of it, let's say. And oddly enough, with this area, most of the companies that had tiles up in here always played second fiddle to some other thing that they had, including Gold Corp.
Yeah,
Manitou got this project initially from them. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting kind of history about that.
Yeah, they pretty much ignored it. Gold Corp, I know, did very little work up there. I think when they were first formed, they had this property and the property up at Red Lake, and they drilled Red Lake first, and that was the end of that story. They never really looked back at the Dryden area very much again.
Yeah, and I think I want to say they optioned it off. I want to say they optioned it off in when, like 2007 or 2010 or something like that. Like,
I believe that was an actual sale. They sold it to Manitou. They did a
long time ago.
Yeah, 2007 they sold it.
Okay, got it. Yeah, yeah, and we obviously I have a connection to this project as well through Goldspot, and so this was interesting because Manitou is a client. We loved this project. We liked this the best out of the entire sort of Manitou thing, and we in fact have a royalty on it to today.
As does Triple Flag.
As does Triple Flag, yeah. Thanks to that, and we're shareholders as well with you guys. So I just want to lay that out there for our listeners to know that certainly there is going to be some bias in here and some enthusiastic bias on our side. About this area, but phenomenal job stitching it together. So let's go to Maura. Maura, what's going on? How come this got you so excited? I mean,
this got me so excited because it has like all of the right ingredients. We have picked up all the property along the Manitou to Norwich shear zone, and you need one of those big continuous structures that can bring in the gold. We compare it to the Duster Porcupine Fault, or the Porcupine other way around.
Sure.
But as that like big continuous gold bearing structure, and you want to be pretty close to that. So all of the ground we picked up is along that within like a kilometer or two. Mm-hmm. And then the other great thing is it has these other secondary structures that are going kind of east-west. So it creates these good traps, and those are the older structures. So they're already existing, and when the D2 deformation event happened, it creates kind of like pooling locations. There's also great regional folds. So you kind of are checking all those boxes that you see in these kind of high-grade low gold deposit systems. We also have really magnetic basalts here. We're just doing some geochemistry now to understand exactly what they are. But to me, it was like unboxing a present, and one that has not seen very much information before. Like, it's always been a logging camp here, so not really a good amount of work's been done, and not a lot of government work either. So there's like
Yeah, certainly not a lot of broad brush work.
No, there's research going on right now at Metal Earth. So like they're publishing year after year, like new papers and new research is coming out, and we're kind of adding to it. So the mag sus we did over the fieldwork in the summer, it all helped with our interpretation.
Did they do a big MT line, like one of those MT seismic kind of survey lines? The Merck.
They did do one along the road. It's I don't think we haven't been able to use it perfectly for what we'd like to see because it doesn't really cut the Manitoulin shears on the way we'd like it to.
Oh shit! Okay.
But we've integrated that into our interpretation. So we worked with Maura Geoscience. I worked with Sean O'Connor back in Red Lake. And he's one of those smart people that makes everything sound so simple, even though it's super complicated. So love working with him. And so we did a 3D inversion of the data and created a geologic model for the whole kind of center of our property, the Gold Rock Camp, we're calling it. That's where the historic mining was. And I think it's really where it makes the most sense to start. There's about 30,000 meters of drilling on the property, and most of that is actually in the Gold Rock Camp. So it gives us a good base. And, we talk about it being so big and like there's so much potential here, but that part of the property is really pretty brownfield. So it gives us a good place to start and test our theses and then move and grow.
And it's a phenomenal, it's an interesting brownfield's advanced location, a little postage stamp of this big picture we're talking about, right? So you've got this big shear zone, this big fault structure, let's say, and you've staked and acquired along either side of that, just to sum that up. You believe that this big structure has extraordinarily deep plumbing and is, the principal conduit, let's say, for gold-bearing fluids to find their way up and through. And then you've got these cross-cutting structures that help focus those fluids or create, dilation zones or areas of structural preparation for those fluids to find cracks and deposit quartz and gold.
Creates great little things for it to bump into and fall out of.
Sure.
And also creates high-grade chutes. So lots of work in Red Lake, 8 years there. So really important for us there was intersection lineations and the plunge of the folds. And so we're looking at both of those things to try to understand why the high grade is oriented the way it is. So mapping the summer to try to hone in on that better. The work we did with Mira for the 3D model really helped that as well. And so that's what our drill program that we've just started, we finished hole 2 this morning, is all about. Sweet.
So the advanced area that's seen the most love, this is sort of we'll call it the Ken West area, the flagship sort of area that has that postage stamp with the most data on it.
The patents.
Now, what jumped out at you about that, Maura, in context of this bigger picture?
It was actually going out to the property and seeing some of the photos. That's where the highest grade hit on the property is, and it's something crazy, right? It's
stupid high grade.
It's stupid. Yeah, exactly.
1,720 ounces per ton. Over half a meter.
Or 53,700 grams per ton over half a meter.
We got pictures of this, right?
Lots of geology slides, of course.
There it is.
Crazy gold. But what I really liked about it after seeing it in person in the on surface was that this vein was fairly continuous. Not pinching and crazy. It was very continuous. We could walk along it for 1.5 kilometers. And then there's halo on either side. And I worked in Red Lake a long time. We didn't have any halo. It was or
vein
waste.
Or not.
Yeah, that's it. And here we actually have halo that runs about 1.5 grams to 2 grams.
And so what does that mean? What does that mean as an exploration geologist when you see a halo of mineralization, low-grade mineralization encapsulating or peripheral to a higher grade vein?
Well, a couple different things. So it helps you vector in on it. That means you can actually use the alteration to say you're getting closer.
Yeah.
And you can use that for more grassroots exploration too. But also, I call it's more followable. So we can see that alteration halo and know we're getting close and to the vein. And so it also makes it more mineable.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Finish your sentence for you. But
that's
okay. and look, Manitou, Maura said there were about 33,000 meters that have been drilled. Probably 20 to 25,000 were within a 1 kilometer on this vein structure. There's 3 or 4 veins in there for sure, maybe more. And they actually drilled this high grade hole by accident. They were drilling the main vein, which would be off to the left in this. You can see the one green hole kept going on, but when they went through, they stepped out over this Big Master 2 vein and hit this, and then came back, and you could see from this cross section they drilled all over trying to hit more of it. Well, they didn't get more of this crazy stuff, but they did hit 300 grams over half a meter there, and but then they also proved with all this drilling, they really validated the halo. Because if you look at the whole cross section, every hole has that halo on it.
Yeah.
Even ones where the vein didn't carry, there still had 10 meters of 1.7 grams. That's just all halo without the carry.
And that's typical in nuggety
Now the other
high
thing,
grade gold systems.
Absolutely.
So it's not unusual.
Yeah.
80. They did.
You could drill a hole 10 feet away. Not even. You could drill a hole a meter away.
Yeah.
And have a totally different number.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so then they came back and did a trenching, pilot mining on up, and you can kind of see it on the picture where they did it above that high grade vein and the structure at surface, and that was over 5 grams.
That's great.
So we have this super high grade potential, high grade with the halo. Starting at surface, not starting at 250 meters deep. So very unusual, in a camp where the Trans-Canada Highway runs right through the northern end of the property. How fun would it be in this day of helicopters and remote drilling to find the next big deposit right off the Trans-Canada Highway, right under their noses?
Well, I can tell you it's a lot of fun because that's what we got at Newfound Gold, right off the Trans-Canada. And it's great. It's just fantastic to see these areas overlooked, consolidated. It's a lot of fun. And so you're 2 holes deep in the new program. You're in the middle of the RTO. How's it going?
Well, that's why we're in Toronto.
By the time this airs, you'll be another couple of days into it.
A couple of days. So we're here. We're doing a financing. We've signed the RTO. We filed with the TSXV. We'll have the symbol DRY, dry.
Oh, cool.
Which I thought was
Fitting.
fitting. And so we're doing a private, what really is a subscription receipts now. In an RTO process. So for accredited investors, we're raising $3 to $5 million.
Okay.
And we're hoping to get the 5. That would cover the drill program, but
It would cover follow-up as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
And one of the things we've been very strategic about too is in the capital structure here is we have of course Earth Labs and investor Eric Sprott's been involved in it. We have brokers and bankers and analysts from I think 6 different firms now involved in it. Some very strategic people, and the guys that we're doing the RTO with, again, very experienced. They are not just guys who are looking to flip their RTO stock. They put these shells together to do successful companies and back people that they think are that they like and think are going to really build something. So that's the Medalist group, and it's going good. We're also lucky in that Manitou Gold, who is our optionor on the property, was bought out by Alamos.
Yep.
So Alamos is now our largest shareholder.
And they own what, like 20%?
No,
roughly?
they're at right about today about 9%.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay.
Now we still owe them some payments, so they will ultimately probably, I would guess, get up to close to 20%.
Got it. Okay.
But it's really come together nicely, and I think with we were so lucky to get Maura, a structural geologist that. That's what this has never had.
Yeah,
this
for
property.
sure. And a big picture thinker, too.
Yeah.
Maura's a talent.
And we were also able to hire just recently Anna Hicken, who was her number 2 at Red Lake. And
Okay.
is a geochemical.
She's a geochemist. She's worked at Sabina. She's worked all over Canada as well. So she brings kind of a good balance to me.
Yep.
More big thinker. She's making sure I'm on all the details too. So it's a good combination.
Well, fantastic. Now, how do you? Okay, so Maura, we've got. You're going to follow up on this area. I know you're testing some cross structures. You've got some interpretations about what maybe these high grade, what's involved structurally to lead us to these high grade shoots, or at least define what these high grade shoots are doing. You're going to test those theories. How do we go about unsorting or sorting through the haystack that is the massive district, i.e. geochemistry? Is there anything on the horizon that you're planning to sort of go out there and check the broader big picture to see if you can find more areas like this?
Yeah, I'm like a true believer in having, I call it a resource pipeline, triangle, whatever you want to call it, but you really have to have priorities on your program.
Yep.
So this summer we went and did prospecting across the whole property. I've been on all of it now, which is a feat because it's a really big property.
It's huge. Yep.
Yeah, so we wanted to try to hone in on this style of mineralization. Within the camp, there is a base metal anomaly with like the Goliath deposit, and there's veins associated with intrusions that you see at Goldlund. We really wanted to do this vein in basalt. So that's what we're really after. And we're honing in on that through the geochemistry, but also through a big structural interpretation with the geophysics. Like there's coverage of this whole camp, and it's government survey, and it's at a really nice tight spacing of about 50 meters. So it gives us a huge opportunity to take that and create models early. And I think that's really helping us factor in. But this drill program will show us what's going on at Ken West and the Gold Rock camp itself, and that generates more targets along the entire property. But when we did that 3D inversion and geologic model, we came up with a whole bunch of anomalies left over from that interpretive work. So it's, to explain it a little bit, it's iterative. You do a geologic model, you go back to the geophys, see where there's anomalies, then you fix it, and you do that a few times. And then you're left over with some targets that, don't make sense based on your geologic model. So they're usually related to alteration or sulfide mineralization. So we were able to go out and ground truth some of them. Some we didn't have outcrop for. Others we did have silicification and sulfides. So the theory is working, and the anomalies are happening over the deposits that we do know about. So it's a good indicator, and there's a lot on this trend. We've got 20 kilometers of strike on that Manitou-Genoric shear zone in the Gold Rock camp. We've only tested 1.5 kilometers. So we're going to do some step outs in this drill program about 1 kilometer away from the known mineralization. We're going to drill under the vein that's never seen any drilling. And I think those will be truths for us to see, are our theories correct? I don't think we've talked about it either, but we're going to drill one deep hole under this high grade area, using the other holes to kind of refine the plunge orientation. We talked about, we think it's related to that intersection lineation or the fold in the area. So we're doing oriented core to really get those measurements and be able to fine tune that so that this drill hole
And then a big DP
hits.
to test it.
Exactly.
Got it. And then the insights of that's going to help you on sorting through your other vectors and that you're delineating from.
Look for similar
structure
patterns. Like it's not. I like to make it very complex. It's not that complex. You look for the same geometries and how they're repeated and those great traps, and look for the structural, the geochemistry, put it together.
Great.
Yeah, she's put together a terrific program because it is such a big package of 50 kilometers of strike on this shear zone, but she's really kind of vectored in, as you said, on where that historic work's been done and where the high grade was hit and where the historic mining was, and then and kind of drawn a circle around that, calling it the Gold Rock camp. That's about 20 kilometers of that strike, and 7 kilometers of that strike is on the patented claim. So we don't need to go and get permits, although we have permits that came with some of our property acquisitions, and getting permits is not a problem. But by vectoring in and doing step outs and going from the known mineralization, we're not just out there wandering on the.
It's not as grassroots.
48,000 square.
You're not starting from zero.
Yeah.
It's really a brownfields project surrounded by
Greenfield potential.
Exactly.
A lot of greenfield potential.
Now, I guess a couple of nitpicky points or question points, I guess, like, because not every story is nothing but positives. Everything
Absolutely.
has hair on it. Is there any, let's talk about this. Any challenges with First Nations in the area?
I think one of the benefits of me living there is that I can go out to community pretty easily. I can pop in with coffee and chat. So we've been building the relationship with Wabigoon Lake First Nation and Eagle Lake First Nation, and so far it's quite positive and good. So we want to keep that foot on the gas and continue that dialogue. So far so good, but it's something that you have to constantly work on it and be genuine. So I tell them my stories too, so I think
Yeah, well, and that's great, and,
Yeah.
and you live there, and so you've got
I think that helps a lot.
that helps a lot for sure. And what about what other sort of challenges? What other sort of issues?
I just add on that First Nations that there are 2 reserves on this trend on the shear zone that you could, if you look at when you look at the map, you say, well, why don't you own that? And there are 2 reserves there. And some property that's either between those reserves or...
Well, there's a little bit of a town there and stuff, but everything we can stake, we have. And then we've discussed...
and some of that we're going to go ahead and we've already discussed with the First Nations where we'll give that back or go to the ministry and have that taken off the... So it will never get explored. So some really good faith moves that we're doing. Yeah,
got it.
Well, I know the area and I know what I've met the people. I know what's important. So it's part of the lake there, Norwick Lake, and it doesn't make sense for us to explore anyway. It's under a lot of water. It's a very popular fishing place, and that's the communities on either side. It doesn't make sense to explore. So we've had that good discussion with them, and I think that just shows we understand a bit.
So what would failure look like here? I mean, we never want to think about that, but I think some people would,
We think our like downside here is that this camp just really needs some high grade to unlock it. Like I did work for Treasury Metals, so I mean, you've got about 3 million ounce resource at 1 gram, but that's pretty hard to get over the line. Like that's harder to build, and I think what you need is high grade in this camp. 6 gram, 10 gram would be great. If we can find some high grade, a couple million ounces, it really unlocks that. And we're already sitting on quite a bit of drilling that I think could be a resource pretty quickly on the Ken West area.
So that's a fair point. So let's just talk about that for a second. So you've got Treasury that has critical mass of 3 million ounces at 1 gram. Right now, in today's gold climate, with today's costs, et cetera, not worth it. But if you start to find some satellite mineralization that's very high grade, as is demonstrated so far, then you bring those 2 elements together, and suddenly the combined picture makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of network of roads here because it's a mining not a mining town, sorry, forestry town.
Yeah.
So there's actually a lot of road network. So it's not like we're going to have a huge struggle to bring this in. It could be a satellite.
So the threshold for sort of materiality of what you need to find here, you don't need to find a standalone 2-3 million ounces of gold. You could find a pod over here of 500,000 ounces, 200,000 ounces high grade. Suddenly now you blend that in with what they've got, and you've got a mine.
I think it really turns on the camp.
Got it.
That's the downside we see because
you're still going to look for a big one, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's there. Like that's what got me excited and said,
that's an interesting point.
I'll come join. But I think that's something that's doable, and there are high grade hits all over that entire shear zone. So we really do believe that it's the key one for high grade.
Now, how about drilling costs? I mean, obviously you're close to Dryden, but it's still Dryden. It's not Timmins.
There's actually quite a bit of work going on lately. So when we did this drill bid, we just talked to drillers that were already working in Dryden. So we decreased our mob costs that way. And like I said, since I've been working in Northwestern Ontario for so long, I kind of know everybody.
What can you get those all-in drill costs per meter in and around, let's say?
Just the drilling itself?
Yeah, and the sampling and all the goodies.
And the sampling.
Yeah.
So I think we'll end up being in around 160.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. And then you bake in your overheads, et cetera, and then you're going to be up to,
and
what we call 300 maybe?
Exactly. With geology team and Dryden's great because there are warehouses and stuff. That's what we have our core shack in. So we've started with a small drill program, but in the future we can really have a shop set up, and that helps bring down costs too.
Great. We mentioned access is very good up here. Okay, so then another question people would have would be continuity. I mean, let's talk about that for a second. It's orogenic, high grade, Archean,
So
shear hosted gold.
always tricky, and that's like my
Yeah.
bread and butter, what I've worked in my whole career. So I strangely love that. But
Yeah, me too.
What got me excited about this one was like walking the vein and the continuity of the vein itself. Now the high grade won't be as continuous as that, but if we can find how often these east-west structures are coming in, we can figure out where the high-grade shoots will be along that vein. And that really gives you the cherries within the overall picture you can mine. And then that halo mineralization also helps make that more mineable, more followable, all those good things that you need when you're actually mining. And I worked in a mine for a long time.
For sure. Geological continuity is important.
You need that, and you have to have something that's of mining with.
Grade
Not just
continuity
flashy.
and geological continuity, just so everyone
Yes, both.
listening knows, are different features, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you've got good geological continuity, you've got a consistent vein that's always there, or it's you can follow it and it's there and it's ever present. The grade may fluctuate, but as long as that vein is there, that's a big difference.
Exactly. It won't all be those stellar grades, but you can follow that, and when you can actually define the high grade shoots, that's when it becomes
Now you're
something
talking.
great. Yeah, and that's that's what our theories are going to test and prove to hopefully understand. But
This is fairly dense country too. So we talk about the consolidation and that it hasn't seen a lot of modern exploration and even for the old timers. I mean, it's clear that what they did is they would see the vein, they would see gold in the vein, probably in most cases, and they would just start mining it. So there's other places where they couldn't access easily, or maybe under some cover that's never really been explored very much. But lately, because of all the logging in the area, we're seeing this property now has much better access than it ever had. And in a lot of the areas, the forestry work is actually stripping off and getting rid of some of that cover and stuff. So the logging in the area has really another
Opened it
real
up.
benefit when you talk about infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, okay, so here's gonna be a fun question. I'll let you guys go because I know that we've been doing this for a while.
Well, before you go, you asked about the downside. You didn't ask about the upside, blue sky story.
Well, I'm gonna get to it, but what's the okay? So, Maura,
yeah,
you've got infinite money, okay, but nothing's infinite.
I know.
Your dream budget: find a mine on this massive land package. That's the goal. You absolutely have to walk away with it. How much money do you need to get that job done? Like if you could only get one balance of money and you had to walk away.
Only one influx.
Yeah, one influx, and you have to walk away with a deposit. What does that ultimately cost
How
you?
big? Because I think we could have.
You
Like
don't
a
have
whole
to
new
define it.
camp
You don't have to
here,
like
you know what I
you don't
mean?
have to like definition drill it,
Okay, we don't.
right?
Have to
You just got to find it.
just
And you got to
find it.
shape it out. You got to find it, sort of shape it out.
Okay, well,
What's
it could
the
be
dream?
even bigger than this, but I think maybe you're looking at to really define something, and I kind of have a
Like
big
to give
mind.
the whole thing a very good crack. No. This
Yeah,
is
okay.
an interesting question.
Yeah, it is. Maybe like, I think 30 million you could do a lot with. Yeah, like you could do a lot. You could. The thing
Trey,
is,
can you find her 30 million?
Well,
maybe
we'll
not all in
we'll
one
find
go.
her 5 first, and then hopefully the other 25 will come easy.
Yeah.
It
I'll
would
help
sure,
you.
It'd sure help if this market shapes up a little bit.
It's not bad though. 30 million to give that a fair crack. That would give it a real good crack.
I think so.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
No, 5. I mean, you're in the market you're in. You can get what you can get done, but you can still do a lot of damage with 5.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. What's the upside, Trey? What's the upside?
Well,
best?
we're not going too far, but we think it's Great Bear 2.0.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. All right.
And that's our goal, is to, sell for $1.5 billion without ever posting a resource.
There we go. I like that. I like that attitude. I like that.
That's the Great Bear model.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, look, I think it's a fantastic project. I think you guys are both fantastic. And thank you so much for coming in. And it's really good to learn about both of your stories. And I wish we could spend, more time talking about it. But I think hopefully our listeners will love this. And I think if they want to find you guys, Dryden Gold has a website. So it looks like it'd be drydengold.com.
Yep.
And then link to presentation. If there is accredited investors listening and they want to participate, we'll include your contact information. I guess the easiest thing.
Yeah, it's
Yep,
going to be a non-brokered deal, but
Okay.
you know, if for Canadians, you know, probably we've got 5 or 6 brokerage firms that'll be participating in it, just because those people are already involved in the.
So if they speak to their broker, they'll be likely able to.
In all
figure it
likelihood,
out,
they
yeah.
go right through their broker. If not, they can contact us directly.
Great. Okay. Well, best of luck. Best of luck for the next few days in Toronto, as you're kissing all the frogs around here, and you know, see what happens. You know, and best luck on the drilling. Actually, first and foremost, I hope you hit it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Danny.
Cheers.